Hi, this is Les with 5 items or less by less. I'm doing an audio for the article I wrote. They've got an option now to put in audio, so I'm working on that until artificial intelligence can do the job for me. It's a May 2024 list. It's been 6 weeks since I wrote another list, the first list or the previous list. On this one, I don't share anything I've read, but I share a lot of social and political things that you can watch and or listen to on YouTube and through podcasts. So here we go. Oh, as a caveat, I won't be reading the text as is, although it will be pretty much the same as the article. So if you read the article, you probably don't have to listen to this. If you listen to this, you don't have to read the article. One thing you will not get in this audio are links. So there you go. So happy Saturday. I have been reading a few books since I wrote the last list, but thought I would concentrate on what I've been listening to and watching. Well, not all that I've been watching, just the intellectual stuff. I'll leave out that I watch an episode or two each evening of the situational comedy Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I think there's 4 episodes on Netflix, so I've been watching that. My wife and daughter watched all 4 seasons. I think there's 8 or 9 seasons of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I've watched it before. I'm watching it again. So that's kind of my cotton candy for the brain. Also, at the link of the there's a link at the bottom of this article that will take you to my initial article on consuming information. It may be something you want to reread if you have not yet started to strategically and intentionally consume information. I want to repeat how important it is to strategically and intentionally consume information. Have a plan of what you want to learn this coming year, this next month, this next week. And since it's Saturday, be sure to write down some of the information you'll consume this week and this month. Don't let the social media algorithm tell you what to watch. Now, in the article, I have a list of how to read this list, but I'm going to forego that. You can look at the article to find that. So I have a few sections here. I have a history section, a race and policing and politics section, an artificial intelligence section, and then a politics section. And then I'm just going to go in that order of what I've got down here. So history, I like history. I am constantly amazed at how we discuss current events without first discussing or thinking about the history leading up to that event. I'm especially surprised by Christians who don't know any history wrapped around their scripture. Now, that's not something I initially, when I was a young man, thought about finding out about, but as we get older, every year we should be learning something about what we're around, the history wrapped around what we're learning. So in this context, when I hear people say that the U.S. has never been this divided, I'm like, that's insane. But I like to respond with, well, did you know we had a civil war? I've got a great book that talks about some of the political parts of the first year of the war, and you can read that book and really quickly find out that there was a lot of division before the war and during the war. And currently, I totally cringe when I hear any form of Palestine is not free because of Israel, as if it's Israel's fault as to what is going on in Palestine, which of course, now that they're in Palestine, then that Israel is doing that, but for a lot of really good, solid historical reasons. And by the way, it's never been easier to learn history. You can watch it for free on YouTube or on multiple great, well-produced, free podcasts. You can spend a little bit of money and you get some great podcasts delivered right to your phone. The first thing the first podcast was called "The Age of Explorers." There's a link in the article. It really shakes off the image of Columbus as a killer of Native Americans and as an all-around horrible guy. In fact, the author is super interesting. He's Spanish English historian. That's his ethnic background. So he has this Spanish Latin last name with a really thick, smarty pants English accent. Generally, I like the podcast because of his enthusiasm with history. Also with what he talks about destroying history as is the truth with history and replacing it with something different. And generally, he shows how we can honor our ancestors and admire those who left all they were familiar with and went exploring. The second one is a podcast I've listened to quite a bit. It's Stuff You Missed in History Class. It's anchored by two women who are a joy to listen to. It's a well-produced podcast. They seem to be having lots of fun and seem genuinely surprised by some of the things they learn in the process of preparing for each topic. The last one I listened to last week was about Levi Strauss, the guy who invented Levi's, and how he got where he got, how he went from Germany to the East Coast to the West Coast, and what he did. And super honorable Jewish guy, which I didn't know a lot about. So very interesting for me. Connects the gold rush and the building of San Francisco and all of that. So that's a great podcast and really good. Little tip: if you like history and people around you don't, then throw in some of the stuff like Levi's. I think it's these two ladies that have a history podcast on spam. So that I do that every once in a while when traveling with people who aren't like history buffs, and people get right into some of those topics. So it's really good. Something my daughter-in-law told me, my very intelligent and into history daughter-in-law tuned me into the fact that you can find all of PBS's documentaries for free on YouTube. That's awesome. They're really good, and they're not really politically. If you go and watch ones before the last 5 years, then they're not like really heavily politically influenced with the new woke progressive stuff. All right. So I watched the Opium Wars, how the opium trade destroyed China's greatest empire, right off of YouTube, no commercials. I didn't know anything about it, but I've heard about the Opium Wars and things like that. And it was just fascinating. I learned, it really helped me to clarify why Britain has Hong Kong, and why I knew that Britain was the smaller, really small, like 40 or 50 times population-wise smaller, way smaller landmass than China. And I got to see like how they traded places. And Britain looked for a war, got a small war, won it quickly, and China was never the same since then. So that's the history section. This one is race and policing. And man, I just want to talk about or share about Roland Fryer. He's a brilliant black economist. He's a social economist. You can't go wrong in listening to anything he says, because even if you disagree with this guy, he's going to say it super well, thoughtfully, and he's going to have data to back it up. And you're going to have to take time to think about what he's saying. So you're going to think about what he's been thinking about. I put a great interview of his. It's a great introduction to who he is, where he comes from, and why he thinks what he thinks. He's got a really interesting history that I didn't know about until I listened to this interview. By the way, I like to listen to what are called social economists. I've got 4 I listen to. I've listed Roland Fryer. The other one is Glenn Lowry of The Glenn Show. But I like to listen to social economists, which I didn't know that's what they were when I started listening to them, is because they're some of the few people who attempt to look at and discuss and dissect social, political, cultural issues from a numerical perspective. So it takes a lot of the emotion and a lot of the like just our small narrow experience, and it expands it. And Roland is famous for putting some data to police brutality, and he was shocked and disappointed about what he found out. And he was told, don't share half of your research, not the other half of your research. And it got him, people tried to cancel him because of the research that he put out there. And then the second guy, the Glenn Lowry of The Glenn Show, is just really like thoughtful, kind, another black economist who speaks openly and clearly about race and politics. I've heard them twice together. They don't always agree, but they always seem to elevate the conversation, and they're very agreeable in their disagreement. I really like that. They really seem to respect each other, and they actually elevate whatever I'm thinking when it comes to politics or race or poverty, cultural differences, stuff like that. Also, I don't have this in my article, but also Tyler Cohen. I like Tyler. He sounds like a robot sometimes, but I really like him. I like his podcast. It's the Tyler Cohen Conversation or something. No, it's called Conversations with Tyler. And I don't listen to all of them because some of them are way over my head, but I do like him a lot, what he says. And again, he's not a Christian. I don't know if any of these three men are Christians, but really articulate, looking for the truth and have a passion for the truth, which I really, really like. All right, so AI, artificial intelligence. Right now, the OpenAI is the biggest, most popular, most well-known, probably the most front of artificial intelligence. You might know it as ChatGPT. They had ChatGPT 3, ChatGPT 4. Now they have ChatGPT O. And that's the one I use that. I pay for that every month. I use it. I'm trying to learn how to use it. Actually, I'm trying to learn how to use it more than I Google, which is hard when you Google so much for so long. So this is the third interview, the one I put in the article. It's the third interview I've listened to. I find it super intriguing how often and how long he pauses when he's asked a question. He seems really thoughtful. Seems thoughtful. I don't know if you can trust him or not of what he's saying, but he seems really thoughtful. Sometimes he, in fact, waits so long that I thought I had accidentally paused the podcast. He seems very young to an older guy like me, but it's a really good interview. And when you're listening to some of these podcasts, like I think this podcast I put up there, but a lot of them have an outline. So it's like from you have the introduction, then from 20 minutes to 27 minutes, they're talking about something maybe you're not interested in. I skip those things. I look at it. There's a topic that I want in an hour or 2 hour podcast. There might be 30 minutes I don't care about. I love that they do that. And then I just fast forward that unless I'm super interested in learning about the person. Okay, so politics. I've got a couple shorts in politics. But I just put the title for politics: transgenderism, the Kentucky Derby, and the pandemic. The first one is Riley Gaines is part of the lawsuit suing the NCAA, the College Athletics Association, over transgender policies. You've heard about the guy swimming. It seems really, really like absurd, like ridiculous. Like, is this a joke when you hear about some of the stuff that's happened? But it's also super sad. And she has been a fierce and clear voice. She was one of the swimmers that had to go hide in a closet change because the guy that said he was a girl that was swimming and winning all the titles, he was not a great swimmer for the boys team. He went to the girls team, became a great swimmer, started winning the medals. For some of these girls who'd been swimming for 10, 15 years in order to be there on the stand swimming in college. So I put a clip of her testifying before Congress. I put a clip of her I put the whole Joe Rogan podcast. But the thing is to listen to the source of what she's actually saying, not just getting clips. So if we hear the things about this lawsuit and Riley Gaines and these types of things, it's super important for us to go listen to other things around that, so we can make those decisions. So somebody's not constantly telling us in a 30-second clip of what's going on. So, and listen to both, not to convince yourself that you are right, and because we do that, but so that you can have a clearer view of the wickedness that's presenting itself through these things. Okay, so I think we miss that aspect. We miss the aspect that there's a wickedness going on, and we're not very clear on it. We're just like, ew, yuck. Let's get some clarity as Christians on why we think the way we do and why we live the way we do and why we vote the way that we do. Now, the Kentucky Derby is a funny thing because there's this a gay guy that reports for the Free Press, which I am a subscriber to the free press. I like the free press. I think it's the most um, it aggregates information or news from their reporters, stuff like that. It's all online, audio, video, text. I like it. I trust it. It gives me a wide perspective of the world outside of the one I live in. Gives me a perspective outside of what I'm sometimes comfortable with. But I really like that. I think it's given me a much more clarity on what it means to disagree, but to be kind. A lot more clarity on what it means to be clear and not mean spirited, and to be clear and stick with what I think. So, but I did. This guy goes around like to a lowrider conference in LA or lowrider, a weekend. But he goes to the Kentucky Derby looking to stir up problems. He goes there. He's really clever and nice, and he's I like him. I like watching him. I've watched he does something like Ben Meets America, and my favorite clip, my favorite quote is at the end. He said, "No one feels as bad as the liberals think they should. No one feels as bad as the liberals think they should." And that kind of summed up the last three things he went to. I think he went to a duck calling contest, and it was like, all like cowboy type stuff, and then this lowrider, female lowrider club, that's what it was. And they're all like, man, just, there's got to be love. There's got to be connection. Don't let people divide you. Don't get caught up in politics. Really good. Liked it. In this section on politics, I also put in a PDF. It's a little bit long, but it's from a section called The Prophets, and it's this guy that probably 40 years ago talked about the pandemic, and he really highlights our inability to gain wisdom from the things that we've done in the past. And even if we've had a 100% failure rate of the models that we use to predict that will happen in the future, we still think, oh, well, I'll predict it correctly this time. And we can say that of scientists and reporters and forecasters and all that thing. But we should start saying it about ourselves first. We have sometimes, when we predict the future, a 100% failure rate. All right. There's a whole nother thing in that with the pessimistic extrapolation, optimistic extrapolation. But I thought it was a really great article. And so that ends 5 items or less, except for this idea I want to end with. If you're not being strategic and intentional about how you consume information, then you'll most likely be consuming a lot of information that is opposing the life you say you want to live. You're saying, I want to feel this way, I want to think this way, I want to live this way, but I'm going to consume daily all of this little bits of garbage, all right? It's opposing what you say you want. It's opposing so much of the stuff that we watch, we listen to, we read, opposes the type of person we say we want to be. So my challenge is to go out there, think about what you're going to consume, how you're going to consume it, why you're going to consume it, and then start consuming it. That doesn't mean you don't have ice cream. That doesn't mean you don't eat informational cookies or gummy bears or things like that. Maybe sometimes you have a big, giant 800-calorie margarita along with your 3,000-calorie cheese enchiladas. That sounds like last Thursday night for me. But you got to do, most of us, man, we just got to be doing more to be strategic, intentional, and thoughtful, and line it up with where we say God wants us to go, who we say God wants us to be. And at the end of the article, I put my first article where I introduced the reason for and the power of intentional and strategic consumption of information. All right. Hope that helps you. Hope you like it. Hope you get something from it. And let me know if you, even for 1 week, intentionally and strategically consume certain types of information. All right. God bless you. Bye.